The candle won't light on the first try, and someone laughs, and you laugh too, because that's what you do when 30 of your closest acquaintances are watching you fail at a lighter. It catches on the third strike. One candle, because Rachel said a full 3-0 would set off the sprinklers, and everyone at the table is holding a drink they didn't pay for, and the bar smells like fried pickles and someone's cologne, and the particular sweetness of a Tuesday that's pretending to be a Saturday. You make the wish. You don't tell anyone what it is. It isn't about money, not yet. Then the check comes, and it is about money, because it's always about money, you just haven't been paying attention. Marcus is the one who starts it. He's doing the thing where he rounds up his share so nobody has to do math, and he says it without weight, the way people say things that have quietly become the center of their lives. I'll just Venmo you. I don't keep much liquid, most of it's in index funds. And Kyle, across the table, laughs and says, "Bold of you to have liquid at all. My money's all in the duplex." And there's a small, warm ripple of agreement, of understood language, of a room full of people who apparently learned a second tongue while you were asleep. You nod. You laugh at the right moment. You have $4,200 in a Wells Fargo savings account earning 0.01% APY, which means the bank pays you 42 cents a year for the privilege of holding everything you have ever managed to keep. And you have never in your life said the words index fund out loud with any idea of what they meant. You are 30 years old today. You make $61,000 a year as a project coordinator, which is a real job with a real title that nobody outside your building can define. You drive a 2016 Civic with 94,000 miles and a check engine light you've decided is spiritual. And until about 90 seconds ago, you thought you were doing fine. Here's what fine was. Fine was the balance not going down. Fine was making rent on the first without the transfer feeling like surgery. Fine was that specific animal relief of refreshing the Chase app on a Thursday and seeing that the direct deposit landed a day early and feeling, for 1 hour, rich. You know that refresh. The pull down, the little spinner, the held breath. You've done it 1,000 times. You did it this morning. Nobody told you that not going down and going up are two entirely different countries, and you've been living in the wrong one your whole adult life. Marcus has $80,000 in index funds. You know this because you ask him, later in the parking lot, quietly, the way you'd ask a doctor about a symptom. He tells you like it's nothing. He started at 23, right out of school, put in $100 a month when $100 a month hurt. I didn't even really get it, he says, breathing fog into the October air. I just didn't stop. He shrugs. Then he says the thing you'll be thinking about at 3 in the morning. The first few years feel completely pointless. That's the part everybody quits during. You don't sleep that night. You lie in the dark and you do the math you've spent 8 years not doing. 80,000, started at 23. That's 100 a month roughly, growing at, you don't even know what it grows at. That's how far outside you've been standing. So you get your phone. And this is where it starts, the thing that starts for millions of people at exactly this hour. The blue rectangle glow on the ceiling at 3 a.m., the search bar, the first honest question you've typed in years. How much would I have if I started at 23? The internet does not comfort you. You fall into it the way you fall asleep, slowly, then all at once. A subreddit, then a thread, then a calculator with sliders, and you drag the sliders, and the number at the bottom keeps changing, and it will not stop hurting you. Somebody on the forum has a signature line, a phrase repeated like scripture. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. You hate it. You hate it because it's aimed at you specifically, at 3 in the morning, and it's true. Here is the arithmetic that is currently ruining your birthday. The S&P 500 has returned, historically, somewhere in the ballroom of 10% a year before inflation over the long run. Call it around 7% after you subtract the slow tax of rising prices. Compounding at that rate, money roughly doubles every 10 years. That's the whole trick. That's the entire secret the duplex and index fund people were speaking in code about. Not picking winners, not timing anything, just time itself doing the work while you sleep and eat fried pickles and refresh your checking account. Run it forward. If you had started at 22, $200 a month every month into a plain total market fund, nothing clever, by 65 you'd be sitting on something in the neighborhood of $700,000, most of which you never earned. You contributed maybe $100,000 of your own money across 43 years. The market handed you the other 600. That's not a reward for being smart. It's a reward for being early. You are not early. You are 8 years late. And 8 years in this particular math is not 8 years. It's the two doublings at the very end, the biggest ones, the ones where the money grows by hundreds of thousands in a single decade, that you will simply never get to have. Starting at 30 instead of 22, same contributions, same returns, cost you somewhere around $400,000 by retirement. $400,000 you will never see, never spend, never know, because at 22 you were buying a used Civic and telling yourself you'd get serious about money once things settled down. Things never settled down. That was the plan's only flaw. It assumed a version of your life that has never once existed. You put the phone face down, you pick it back up, you put it down. This goes on for a while. Somewhere in there, and you won't remember deciding, you download Robinhood. The little green icon sits on your home screen next to the Chase app like it wandered in from someone else's phone. You don't open it, not yet. You just look at it. You've heard the name the way you've heard the names of neighborhoods you can't afford to live in. The next morning you go to work and you cannot stop seeing it. The math is now a lens. Karen from accounting mentions her 401k match and your stomach drops because, and you have to sit down for this one, your own company offers a match, 50 cents on the dollar up to 6%. You've been auto-declining it for 3 years because the enrollment email always came during a busy week and, "I'll do it next paycheck," is the most expensive sentence in the English language. On $61,000 a year, 6% is roughly $3,600 you put in, and $1,800 your company hands you for free every year that you have been actively refusing. Free money. You said no to free money because opening the email felt like a chore. You go to the bathroom at 10:40 a.m., and you don't cry exactly. You just stand there. The Roth versus traditional decision arrives that weekend and nearly ends you. You sit at your kitchen table with a legal pad, which is what people do when they've decided to be serious, and don't yet know that being serious mostly looks like being confused with a pen. Roth. You pay the tax now, and the money grows and comes out completely tax-free when you're old. Traditional. You skip the tax now, get a deduction this year, and pay the tax later when you withdraw. The whole question, boiled down, is a single bet. Will your tax rate be higher now or higher when you're 65? You have no idea. Nobody has any idea. That's the part that paralyzes you. You're being asked to predict the tax code of a country 40 years from now, and you can't predict your own weekend. You open 3 tabs, you close 3 tabs. You do the thing where you research a decision so thoroughly that the research becomes a way of not deciding. And then Rachel calls, and this is the part you'll want to remember. Rachel is your oldest friend, the one who was there when your dad got sick, the one whose kitchen you slept on for a month at 24. She teaches 3rd grade. She makes less than you and always has. And when you spiral at her over the phone about marginal rates and future tax brackets, she is quiet for a second, and then she says, "You're 30 and you make 60 grand. You're almost certainly going to earn more later than you do right now. Pay the tax at the cheap rate, do the Roth, and here her voice does the thing it does when she's about to be kind and merciless at once. Stop building a spreadsheet to avoid buying the thing. Just buy $50 of something." That's the whole lesson. The Roth IRA, for someone your age on your income, with your income almost certainly rising, is very likely the right call. You pay tax on the seed instead of the harvest, and the harvest is the part that's going to be enormous. But that's not the part that gets you. The part that gets you is, spend money to avoid deciding. You've been doing it for 8 years. Research as procrastination wearing a lab coat. So you open Robinhood. Finally. You transfer money into a Roth IRA. You set it to the maximum you can stomach, and you go to buy your first fund. And here comes the last small terror nobody warns you about, the ticker screen. Because there isn't one fund. There's VTI and VOO, and VT and SPY and VXUS, and a wall of 4-letter words that all seem to promise the same thing in slightly different accents. You spend 40 minutes learning that VTI is the entire US stock market in a single purchase. Every public company, the whole thing, weighted by size, for an expense ratio so small it's basically a rounding error, something like 3 cents a year on every $100. One click and you own a sliver of thousands of companies, the plumbing of an entire economy. For 3 cents, you buy $200 of VTI, and it feels like nothing. That's the cruel joke of the first purchase. You expected fireworks. You braced for it like a needle at the doctor's. and instead a number just quietly appears in an app, and the market's already closed, so it doesn't even move, it just sits there, and you think, $200 against 400,000 lost. This is a thimble against a house fire. This is absurd. It also feels, underneath the nothing, like the most terrifying thing you've ever done, because for the first time in your life, your money can go down. You have voluntarily strapped 4,000 years of savings anxiety onto a thing that will, some Mondays, be worth less than it was on Friday, and you did it on purpose, and there's no undo button that makes you feel safe again. Meaningless and terrifying at the same time, in the same breath. That's the doorway everyone stands in. Most people back out of it. You don't back out. You do the one thing Marcus told you in the parking lot. You don't stop. 200 becomes 200 every 2 weeks, automated, so your willpower never has to enter the room. You turn on the 401k match finally, and the first paycheck afterward is smaller, and you feel it, and you let yourself feel it, and then you get over it. You cancel 3 subscriptions in one afternoon, a meditation app you used twice, a streaming service you forgot the password to, a $14 cloud storage plan you'd been paying for since the Obama administration, and you feel, weirdly, genuinely proud, prouder of the $14 than the amount deserves, and that pride is the real thing that changes. That's the muscle that grows. Here's what nobody tells you about the middle. The middle is boring, gloriously, savingly boring. Meanwhile, the 2 lives you're measuring yourself against keep moving, and neither one goes where the math promised. Marcus, the index fund guy, hits 110,000 and then, in a bad year, watches it fall to 85 in about 6 weeks, and he calls you, rattled, this man you thought had it figured out, and you realize the 80,000 at the bar was never certainty. It was just the same fear as yours, wearing a nicer coat. And Kyle with the duplex. Kyle's tenant stops paying in the spring, and it takes 7 months and a lawyer to get him out. And there's a water heater, and a roof thing, and Kyle is technically wealthier than all of you, and hasn't slept properly in a year. Owning a building, it turns out, is a job. Nobody told him it was a second job. He didn't get to decide whether he wanted it. You'd envied both of them across a bar table. From the inside, both of them are just people carrying something heavy and hoping it was the right thing to pick up. You still don't know which of them chose correctly. You never will. That's not the kind of question that gets answered. It's the kind you find out you were asking wrong. The relational cost is smaller than any of that, and it's the only part that still catches in your throat. Your dad. The year you turned 22, the year Marcus was putting his first pointless feeling $100 into the market, your dad tried to talk to you about this. He sat you down after your college graduation with a folder, an actual Manila folder, and he had printed things out, and he said he'd started too late himself, and he didn't want you to, and you were 22, and the whole world was a party you were late for, and you said, "Yeah, Dad, definitely, once I get settled." He put the folder away. He didn't push. He was like that. He passed 4 years ago, and you cleaned out his desk, and the folder was still in there, and you'd thrown it out without opening it, because it was just old papers, because grief makes you throw out exactly the wrong things. He knew. He tried to hand you the 8 years, and you told him you'd get to it once things settled down. You are 35 now. It's a Sunday. The account, the boring one, the one you don't check anymore because checking it was never the thing that made it grow, sits somewhere north of $40,000, and about a third of that is money you never earned, money the market handed you for the crime of finally not stopping. 40 grand isn't rich. You know exactly what 40 grand is and isn't, but run it forward the way you did at 3 a.m. 5 years ago, with the same tree planting math, and $500 a month for 30 more years at historical returns lands you somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000 by 65. Late, and still enough. 30 was not 50. That turned out to matter more than the 400,000 you lost. You still do the pull-down refresh sometimes. Old habits. But the number on top isn't the one that decides your mood anymore, because you finally understand it was never the one that mattered. Your dad's granddaughter is 4. She's asleep on your chest right now, and she's heavy in that specific way, and you are thinking about a manila folder you threw away, and you are wondering whether, when she's 22 and the whole world is a party she thinks she's late for, she'll listen to you any better than you listen to him, or whether that's just the tax every generation pays, the one nobody warns you about, the one you don't feel until it's already been paid. She shifts in her sleep. You don't move. You've got time.